Is anybody crazy from seeing me yet? This is 3 days in a row going live. Again, reading Harry Potter. You get to see me as I get comfy too, because I just got home. Oh, we got a viewer. Now, is it Angie? Oh, we got two. There's Capri. Oh, hey, stop that. I'm just waiting to know that Angie and Manny and the fam is here, and then I'll start reading. Because Manny's got bedtime in 1 hour, so... Angie, are you here? Somebody else is watching. Are you gonna watch the whole thing, Capri? Or listen. You don't have to watch me. You can just listen. Okay, Angie just sent me a private message. I'm gonna assume that means that she's here. There she is. Okay. All right. So, we ended with them at the shack, right? Oh, look at all the hearts. Hi. All right. So, Hagrid has Harry now, right? Harry found out that he's a wizard. You're a wizard, Harry! Now we know where that saying comes from. You don't have to stay the whole time, Capri. It's okay. I take no offense, but it is apparently fun to listen to me read. All right. So now we're on chapter 5, Diagon Alley. This will be Harry's very first trip down Diagon Alley, learning about the whole wizarding world. All right, let's go. Harry woke early the next morning. Although he could tell it was daylight, he kept his eyes shut tight. It was a dream, he told himself faintly. I dreamed a giant called Hagrid came to tell me I was going to a school for wizards. When I open my eyes, I'll be at home in my cupboard. There was suddenly a loud tapping noise. And there's Aunt Petunia knocking on the door, Harry thought, his heart sinking. But he still didn't open his eyes. It had been such a good dream. Tap, tap, tap. All right, Harry mumbled, I'm getting up. He sat up, and Hagrid's heavy coat fell off of him. The hut was full of sunlight, the storm was over. Hagrid himself was asleep on the collapsed sofa, and there was an owl rapping its claw on the window, a newspaper held in its beak. Harry scrambled to his feet, so happy he felt as though a large balloon was swelling inside him. He went straight to the window and jerked it open. The owl swooped in and dropped the newspaper on top of Hagrid, who didn't wake up. The owl then fluttered onto the floor and began to attack Hagrid's coat. Don't do that! Harry tried to wave the owl out of the way, but it snapped its beak fiercely at him and carried on savaging the coat. Hagrid, said Harry loudly, there's an owl! Pay him, Hagrid grunted from into the sofa. What? He wants pay for delivering the paper. Look in the pockets. Hagrid's coat seemed to be made of nothing but pockets. Bunches of keys, slug pellets, balls of string, peppermint humbugs, tea bags, and finally, Harry pulled out a handful of strange-looking coins. Give him 5 nuts, said Hagrid sleepily. Nuts? The little bronze ones. Harry counted out 5 little bronze coins, and the owl held out his leg so Harry could put the money in a small leather pouch tied to it. Then he flew off through the window. Hagrid yawned loudly and sat up, scrunched. He stretched. Best be off, Harry. Lots to do today. Gotta get up to London and buy all your school stuff. Harry was turning over the wizarding coins, looking at them. He had just thought of something that made him feel as though the happy balloon inside him had gotten a puncture. Hagrid? Said Hagrid, who was pulling on his large boots. I haven't got any money. You heard Uncle Vernon last night. He won't pay for me to go and learn magic. Oh, don't worry about that, said Hagrid, standing up and scratching his head. Do you think your parents didn't leave you anything? But if their house was destroyed, they didn't keep their gold in the house, boy. Nah, first stop for us is Gringotts, Wizarding Bank. Have a sausage, they're not bad cold, and I wouldn't say no to a bit of birthday cake neither. Wizards have banks? Well, just the one, Gringotts, run by goblins. Harry dropped the bit of sausage he was holding. Goblins? Yeah, so you'd be mad to try to rob it, I tell you that. Never mess with goblins, Harry. Gringotts is the safest place in the world for anything you want to keep safe. Except maybe Hogwarts. As a matter of fact, I gotta visit Gringotts anyway, for Dumbledore. Hogwarts business. Hagrid drew himself up proudly. He gets me to do important stuff for him. Fetching you, getting things from Gringotts. Knows he can trust me, see? Got everything? Come on, then. Harry followed Hagrid out onto the rock. The sky was quite clear now, and the sea gleamed in the sunlight. The boat Uncle Vernon had hired was still there, with a lot of water in the bottom after the storm. How did you get here? Harry asked, looking around for another boat. Flew, said Hagrid. Flew? Yeah, but we'll go back in this. Not supposed to use magic now I've got you. They settled down in the boat, Harry still staring at Hagrid, trying to imagine him flying. Seems a shame to row, though, said Hagrid, giving Harry another of his sideways looks. If I was to speed things up a bit, would you mind not mentioning it at Hogwarts? Of course not, said Harry, eager to see more magic. Hagrid pulled out his pink umbrella again, tapped it twice on the side of the boat, and they sped off towards land. Why would you be mad to try and rob Gringotts? Harry asked. Oh, spells, enchantments, said Hagrid, unfolding his newspaper as he spoke. They say there's dragons guarding the high security vaults, and then you gotta find your way. Gringotts is hundreds of miles under London, see? Deep under the underground. You'd die of hunger trying to get out, if you did manage to get your hands on something. Harry sat and thought about this while Hagrid read his newspaper, the Daily Prophet. Harry had learned from Uncle Vernon that people liked to be left alone when they did this, but it was very difficult. He had so many questions in his life. He'd never had so many questions in his life. Ministry of Magic, messing things up as usual, Hagrid muttered, turning the page. There's a Ministry of Magic? Harry asked, before he could stop himself. Course, said Hagrid. They wanted Dumbledore for minister, of course, but he'd never leave Hogwarts, so old Cornelius Fudge got the job. Bungler, if ever there was one. So he pelts Dumbledore with owls every morning asking for advice. What does a Ministry of Magic do? Well, their main job is to keep it from the Muggles that there's still witches and wizards up and down the country. Why? Why? Blimey, Harry. Everyone be wanting magic solutions to their problems. Nah, we're best left alone. At that moment, the boat bumped gently into the harbor wall. Hagrid folded up his newspaper and they clambered up the stone steps onto the street. Passers-by stared at Hagrid as they walked through the little town to the station. Harry couldn't blame them. Not only was Hagrid twice as tall as everyone else, he kept pointing at perfectly ordinary things like parking meters and saying loudly, See, Harry? These Muggles dream up, huh? Hagrid, said Harry, panting a bit as he ran to keep up, did you say there are dragons at Gringotts? Well, so they say, said Hagrid. Crikey, I'd like a dragon. You'd like one? Wanted one ever since I was a kid. Ah, here we go. They had reached the station. There was a train to London in 5 minutes' time. Hagrid didn't understand muggle money, as he called it, so he gave the bills to Harry so he could buy their tickets. People stared more than ever on the train. Hagrid took up 2 seats and sat knitting what looked like a canary yellow circus tent. Still got your letter, Harry? He asked as he counted stitches. Harry took out the parchment envelope from his pocket. Good, said Hagrid. There's a list there of everything you need. Harry unfolded a piece of paper he hadn't noticed the night before and read. Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Uniform. First year students will require, number 1, 3 sets of plain work robes, black. Number 2, 1 plain pointed hat, black, for day wear. Number 3, 1 pair of protective gloves, dragon's hide or similar. Number 4, 1 winter cloak, black with silver fastenings. Please note that all pupils' clothing should carry name tags. Course books. All students should have a copy of each of the following. The Standard Book of Spells, Grade 1, by Miranda Goshawk. A History of Magic by Bethelda Bagshot. Magical Theory by Adalbert Waffling. A Beginner's Guide to Transfiguration by Emmerich Switch. 1000 Magical Herbs and Fungi by Flilda Spore. Magical Drafts and Potions. I'm not even going to continue reading these last names. Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them by Newt Scamander. We should know that one. Dark Forces, A Guide to Self-Protection by Quentin Trimble. Other equipment. 1 wand, 1 cauldron, pewter standard size 2, 1 set glass or crystal phials, 1 telescope, 1 set brass scales. Students may also bring an owl, a cat, or a toad. Hey, Justin. Parents are reminded that first years are not allowed their own broomsticks. No brooms. Can we buy all of this in London? Harry wondered aloud. If you know where to go, said Hagrid. Harry had never been to London before. Although Hagrid seemed to know where he was going, he was obviously not used to getting there in an ordinary way. He got stuck at the ticket barrier on the underground and complained loudly that the seats were too small and the train too slow. I don't know how the Muggles manage without magic, he said as they climbed a broken-down escalator that led up to a bustling road lined with shops. Hagrid was so huge that he parted the crowd easily. All Harry had to do was keep close behind him. They passed bookshops and magic stores, hamburger restaurants and cinemas, but nowhere that looked as if it could sell you a magic wand. There was just an ordinary street full of ordinary people. Could there really be piles of wizard gold buried miles beneath them? Were there really shops that sold spell books and broomsticks? Might this not all be some huge joke that the Dursleys had cooked up? If Harry hadn't known that the Dursleys had no sense of humor, he might have thought so. Yet somehow, even though everything Hagrid had told him was so far unbelievable, Harry couldn't help trusting him. This is it, said Hagrid, coming to a halt. The Leaky Cauldron. It's a famous place. It was a tiny, grubby-looking pub. If Hagrid hadn't pointed it out, Harry wouldn't have noticed it was there. The people hurrying by didn't glance at all. Their eyes slid from the big bookshop on one side to the record shop on the other, as if they couldn't see the Leaky Cauldron at all. In fact, Harry had the most peculiar feeling that only he and Hagrid could see it. Before he could mention this, Hagrid had steered him inside. For a famous place, it was very dark and shabby. A few old women were sitting in a corner drinking tiny glasses of sherry. One of them was smoking a long pipe. A little man in a top hat was talking to the old bartender, who was quite bald and looked like a toothless walnut. Interesting description. The low buzz of chatter stopped when they walked in. Everyone seemed to know Hagrid. They waved and smiled at him. The bartender reached for a glass, saying, "The usual Hagrid?" "Cat, Tom, I'm on Hogwarts business," said Hagrid, clapping his great hand on Harry's shoulder and making Harry's knees buckle. "Good Lord," said the bartender, peering at Harry. Can this be?" The leaky cauldron had suddenly gone completely still and silent. "Bless my soul," whispered the old bartender. "Harry Potter, what an honor!" He hurried out from behind the bar and rushed toward Harry, seized his hand and tears in his eyes. "Welcome back, Mr. Potter, welcome back!" Harry didn't know what to say. Everyone was looking at him. The old woman with the pipe was puffing on it without realizing it had gone out. Hagrid was beaming. Then there was a great scraping of chairs, and the next moment, Harry found himself shaking hands with everyone in the leaky cauldron. "Doris Crockford, Mr. Potter. Can't believe I'm meeting you at last." "So proud, Mr. Potter. I'm just so proud." "Always wanted to shake your hand. I'm all aflutter." "Delighted, Mr. Potter. Just can't tell you. Diggle's the name. Diddlus Diggle." "I've seen you before," said Harry, as Diddlus Diggle's top hat fell off in excitement. "You bowed to me once in a shop." "He remembers!" cried Diddlus Diggle, looking round at everyone. "Do you hear that? He remembers me!" Harry shook hands again and again. Doris Crockford kept coming back for more. A pale young man made his way forward very nervously. One of his eyes was twitching. "Professor Quirrell," said Hagrid. "Harry, Professor Quirrell will be one of your teachers at Hogwarts." "Potter," stammered Professor Quirrell, grasping Harry's hand. "Can't tell you how pleased I am to meet you." "What sort of magic do you teach, Professor Quirrell?" Defense against the dark arts," muttered Professor Quirrell, as though he'd rather not think about it. Not that you need it, Potter?" He laughed nervously. "You'll be getting all your equipment, I suppose. I've got to pick up a new book on vampires myself." He looked terrified at the very thought. But the others wouldn't let Professor Quirrell keep Harry to himself. It took almost 10 minutes to get away from them all. At last, Hagrid managed to make himself heard over the babble. "Must get on! Lots to buy! Come on, Harry!" Doris Crockford shook Harry's hand one last time, and Hagrid led them through the bar, out into a small walled courtyard where there was nothing but a trash can and a few weeds. Hagrid grinned at Harry. "Told you, didn't I? Told you you'd be famous. Even Professor Quirrell was trembling to meet you. Mind you, he's usually trembling." "Is he always that nervous?" "Oh, yeah, poor bloke. Brilliant mind. He was fine while he was studying out of books, and then he took a year off to get some first-hand experience. They say he met vampires in the Black Forest, and there was a nasty bit of trouble with a hag. Never been the same since. Scared of the students, scared of his own subject. Now, where's my umbrella?" Vampires? Hags? Harry's head was swimming. Hagrid, meanwhile, was counting bricks on the wall above the trash can. 3 up, 2 across, he muttered. "Right, stand back, Harry." He tapped the wall 3 times with the point of his umbrella. The brick he had touched quivered, it wiggled. In the middle, a small hole appeared, and it grew wider and wider. A second later, they were facing an archway large enough for Hagrid, an archway out onto a cobbled street that twisted and turned out of sight. "Welcome," said Hagrid, "to Diagon Alley." He grinned at Harry's amazement. They stepped through the archway. Harry looked quickly over his shoulder and saw the archway shrinking instantly back into a solid wall. The sun shone brightly on a stack of cauldrons outside in the nearest shops. Cauldrons, all sizes, copper, brass, pewter, silver, self-stirring, collapsible, said a huge sign hanging above them. Yeah, you'll be needing one, said Hagrid, but we gotta get your money first. Harry wished he'd had 8 more eyes. He turned his head in every direction as they walked up the street, trying to look at everything at once. The shops, the things outside them, the people doing their shopping. A plump woman outside an apothecary was shaking her head as they passed by, saying, "Dragon liver, 17 sickles an ounce. They're mad." A low, soft hooting came from a dark shop with a sign saying, "Elop's Owl Emporium. Tawny, Screech, Barn, Brown, and Snowy." Several boys of about Harry's age had their noses pressed against a window with broomsticks on it. "Look," Harry heard one of them say, "the new Nimbus 2000, fastest ever." There were shops selling robes, shops selling telescopes and strange silver instruments Harry had never seen before. Windows stacked with barrels of bat spleens and eel eyes, tottering piles of spell books, quills, and rolls of parchment, potion bottles, globes of the moon. "Gringotts," said Hagrid. They had reached a snowy white building that towered over the other shops. Standing beside its burnished bronze doors, wearing uniform of scarlet and gold, was... "Yep, that's a goblin," said Hagrid quietly as they walked up the steps towards him. The goblin was about a head shorter than Harry. He had a swarthy, clever face, a pointed beard, and, Harry noticed, very long fingers and feet. He bowed as they walked inside, and now they were facing a second pair of doors, silver this time, with words engraved on them. "Enter, stranger, but take heed of what awaits the sin of greed. For those who take but do not earn must pay most dearly in their turn. So if you seek beneath our floors a treasure that was never yours, thief, you have been warned, beware of finding more than treasure there." "Like I said, you'd be mad to rob it," said Hagrid. A pair of goblins bowed them through the silver doors, and they were in a vast marble hall. About 100 more goblins were sitting on high stools behind a long counter, scribbling in large ledgers, weighing coins in brass scales, examining precious stones through eyeglasses. There were too many doors to count leading off the hall. Yet more goblins were showing people in and out of these. Hagrid and Harry made for the counter. "Mornin'," said Hagrid to a free goblin. "We've come to take some money out of Mr. Harry Potter's safe." You have his key, sir?" "Got it here somewhere," said Hagrid, as he started emptying his pockets onto the counter, scattering a handful of moldy dog biscuits over the goblin's book of numbers. The goblin wrinkled his nose. Harry watched the goblin on their right weighing a pile of rubies as big as glowing coals. "Got it," said Hagrid at last, holding up a tiny golden key. The goblin looked at it closely. "That seems to be in order." "And I've got a letter here from Professor Dumbledore," said Hagrid importantly, throwing out his chest. "It's about the you-know-what in Vault 713. The goblin read the note carefully. "Very well," he said, handing it back to Hagrid. "I will have someone take you down to both vaults. Griphook!" Griphook was yet another goblin. Once Hagrid had crammed all the dog biscuits back inside his pocket, he and Harry followed Griphook toward one of the doors leading off the hall. "What's the you-know-what in Vault 713, Harry asked. "Can't tell you that," said Hagrid mysteriously. "Very secret. Hogwarts business. Dumbledore trusted me. More'n my job's worth to tell you that." Griphook held the door open for them. Harry, who had expected more marble, was surprised. They were in a narrow stone passageway lit with flaming torches. It sloped steeply downward, and there were little railway tracks on the floor. Griphook whistled and a small cart came hurtling up the tracks toward them. They climbed in, Hagrid with some difficulty, and they were off. At first they just hurtled through a maze of twisting passages. Harry tried to remember left, right, left, middle fork, right, left, but it was impossible. The rattling cart seemed to know its own way, because Griphook wasn't steering. Harry's eyes stung as the cold air rushed past them, but he kept them wide open. Once he thought he saw a burst of fire at the end of a passageway. He twisted around to see if it was a dragon, but he was too late. They plunged even deeper, passing an underground lake where huge stalactites and stalagmites grew from the ceiling and floor. "I never knew," Harry called to Hagrid over the noise of the cart. "What's the difference between a stalagmite and a stalactite?" "Stalagmite's got an M in it," said Hagrid. "And don't ask me questions just now. I think I'm going to be sick." He did look very green, and when the cart stopped at last beside a small door in the passage wall, Hagrid got out and had to lean against the wall to stop his knees from trembling. Griphook unlocked the door. A lot of green smoke came billowing out, and as it cleared, Harry gasped. Inside were mounds of gold coins, columns of silver, heaps of little bronze nuts. "All yours," smiled Hagrid. All Harry's. It was incredible. The Dursleys couldn't have known all this, or they'd have had it from him faster than blinking. How often had they complained how much Harry cost them to keep? And all that time there was a small fortune belonging to him, buried deep under London. Hagrid helped Harry pile some of it in a bag. "The gold ones are galleons," he explained. 17 silver sickles to a galleon. 29 nuts to a sickle. It's easy enough." "Right, there should be enough for a couple of terms. We'll keep the rest safe for you." He turned to Griphook. "Vault 713 now, please. And can we go more slowly?" "One speed only," said Griphook. They were going even deeper now and gathering speed. The air became colder and colder as they hurtled around tight corners. They were rattling over an underground ravine, and Harry leaned over to try to see what was down at the dark bottom, but Hagrid groaned and pulled him back by the scruff of the neck. Vault 713 had no keyhole. "Stand back," said Griphook importantly. He stroked the door gently with one of his long fingers, and it simply melted away. "If anyone but a Gringotts goblin had tried that, they'd be sucked through the door and trapped in there," said Griphook. "How often do you check to see if someone's inside?" Harry asked. "Oh, about once every 10 years, said Griphook with a rather nasty grin. Something rather extraordinary had to be inside this top secret security vault, Harry was sure, and he leaned forward eagerly, expecting to see fabulous jewels at the very least. But at first he thought it was empty. And then he noticed a grubby little package wrapped up in brown paper laying on the floor. Hagrid picked it up and tucked it deep inside its coat. Harry longed to know what it was, but knew better than to ask. "Come on, back in this infernal cart, and don't talk to me on the way back. It's best I keep me mouth shut," said Hagrid. One wild cart ride later, they stood blinking in the sunlight outside Gringotts. Harry didn't know where to run first now that he had a bag full of money. He didn't know how many galleons there were to a pound to know... He didn't need to know how many galleons there were to a pound to know that he was holding more money than he had had in his whole life. More money than even Dudley had ever had. "All right, might as well get your uniform," said Hagrid, nodding toward Madame Milkin's robes for all occasions. Listen, Harry, would you mind if I slipped off for a pick-me-up at the Leaky Cauldron? I hate them Gringotts carts." He still looked a bit sick, so Harry entered Madame Milkin's shop alone, feeling nervous. "I need a drink of water." Oh, thank you, Sam. I'll wave to everybody. Oh, okay. Reading makes me thirsty. If anybody needs any motivation to drink a lot of water, just read a book out loud. I swear. All of the hearts. Thank you, Angie. All right. Madame Milken was a squat, smiling witch dressed all in mauve. Hogwarts, dear, she said when Harry started to speak. Got the lot here. Another young man being fitted up just now, in fact. In the back of the shop, a boy with a pale, pointed face was standing on a footstool while a second witch pinned up his long black robes. Madame Milken stood Harry on a stool next to him, slipped a long robe over his head, and began to pin it to the right length. Hello, said the boy. Hogwarts too? Yes, said Harry. My father's next door buying my books, and mother's up the street looking at wands, said the boy. He had a bored, drawling voice. And then I'm going to drag them off to look at racing brooms. I don't see why first years can't have their own. I think I'll bully father into getting me one, and I'll smuggle it in somehow. Harry was strongly reminded of Dudley. Have you got your own broom? The boy went on. No, said Harry. Play Quidditch at all? No, Harry said again, wondering what on earth Quidditch could be. I do. Father says it's a crime if I'm not picked to play for my house, and I must say I agree. Know what house you'll be in yet? No, said Harry, feeling more stupid by the minute. Well, no one really knows until they get there, do they? But I know I'll be in Slytherin. All my family have been. Imagine being in Hufflepuff. I think I'd leave, wouldn't you? Said Harry, wishing he could say something a bit more interesting. I say, look at that man, said the boy suddenly, nodding towards the front window. Hagrid was standing there grinning at Harry and pointing at 2 large ice creams to show he couldn't come in. That's Hagrid, said Harry, pleased to know something the boy didn't. He works at Hogwarts. Oh, said the boy. I've heard of him. He's sort of a servant, isn't he? He's the gamekeeper, said Harry. He was liking the boy less and less every second. Yes, exactly. I heard he's sort of savage. Lives in a hut on the school grounds, and every now and then he gets drunk and tries to do magic, and ends up setting fire to his bed. I think he's brilliant, said Harry coldly. Do you? Said the boy with a sneer. Why is he with you? Where are your parents? They're dead, said Harry shortly. He didn't feel much like going into the matter with the boy. Oh, sorry, said the other, not sounding sorry at all. But they were our kind, weren't they? They were a witch and wizard, if that's what you mean. I really don't think we should let any other sort in, do you? They're just not the same. They've never been brought up to know our ways. Some of them have never even heard of Hogwarts until they got the letter. Imagine. I think they should keep it to the old wizarding families. What's your surname, anyway? Before Harry could answer, Madame Milken said, Okay, that's you done, my dear. And Harry, not sorry for an excuse to stop talking to the boy, hopped down from the footstool. Well, I'll see you at Hogwarts, I suppose, said the drawling boy. Harry was rather quiet as he ate the ice cream Hagrid had bought him. Chocolate and raspberry with chopped nuts. That sounds yummy. What's up? Said Hagrid. Nothing, Harry lied. They stopped to buy parchment and quills. Harry cheered up a bit when he found a bottle of ink that changed color as you wrote. When they left the shop, he said, Hagrid, what's Quidditch? Blimey, Harry, I keep forgetting how little you know, not knowing about Quidditch. Don't make me feel worse, said Harry. He told Hagrid about the pale boy at Madame Milkin's. He said people from Muggle families shouldn't even be allowed in. You're not from a Muggle family. If he'd known who you were, he's grown up knowing your name if his parents are wizarding folk. You saw what everyone at the Leakery Cauldron was like when they saw you. Anyway, what does he know about it? Some of the best I ever known were the... Okay. Anyway, what does he know about it? Some of the best I ever saw were the only ones with magic in them in a long line of muggles. Look at your mom. Look at what she had for a sister. So, what is Quidditch? It's our sport. Wizard sport. It's like soccer in the Muggle world. Everyone follows Quidditch. Played up on the air on broomstick, and there's 4 balls. Sort of hard to explain the rules. And what are Slytherin and Hufflepuff? School houses. There's 4. Everyone says Hufflepuff are a lot of old duffers, but... I bet I'll be a Hufflepuff, said Harry gloomily. Better Hufflepuff than Slytherin, said Hagrid darkly. There's not a single witch or wizard who went bad who wasn't in Slytherin. You know who was one. Sorry, you know who was at Hogwarts? Years and years ago, said Hagrid. They bought Harry's school books in a shop called Flourish and Blots, where the shelves were stacked to the ceiling with books as large as paving stones bound in leather. Books the size of postage stamps in covers of silk. Books full of peculiar symbols, and a few books with nothing in them at all. Even Dudley, who had never read anything, would have gone wild to get his hands on some of these. Hagrid almost had to drag Harry away from curses and counterspells, bewitch your friends and befuddle your enemies with the latest revenges, hair loss, jelly leg, tongue-tying, and much, much more. By Professor Vindicus Viridian. I was trying to find out how to curse Dudley. I'm not saying that's not a good idea, but you're not to use magic in the Muggle world except in very special circumstances, said Hagrid. And anyway, you couldn't work any of them curses yet. You'll be needing a lot more studying before you get to that level. Hagrid wouldn't let Harry buy a solid gold cauldron either. It says pewter on your list. But they got a nice set of scales for weighing potion ingredients and a collapsible brass telescope. Then they visited the apothecary, which was fascinating enough to make up for its horrible smell. A mixture of bad eggs and rotted cabbages. Barrels of slimy stuff stood on the floor. Jars of herbs, dried roots, and bright powders lined the walls. Bundles of feathers, strings of fangs, and gnarled claws hung from the ceiling. While Hagrid asked the man behind the counter for a supply of some basic potion ingredients for Harry, Harry himself examined a silver unicorn horn at 21 galleons each, and minuscule, glittery black beetle eyes, 5 nuts a scoop. Outside the apothecary, Hagrid checked Harry's list again. Just your wand left. Oh, yeah, and I still haven't got your birthday present. Harry felt himself go red. You don't have to. I know I don't have to. Tell you what, I'll get you an animal. Not a toad. Toads went out of fashion years ago and you'd be laughed at. And I don't like cats. They make me sneeze. They make me sleaze. I'll get you an owl. All the kids want owls. They're dead useful, carrying your mail and everything. 20 minutes later, they left Elop's Owl Emporium, which had been dark and full of rustling and flickering jeweled bright eyes. Okay. Harry now carried a large cage that held a beautiful, snowy owl, fast asleep with her head under her wing. He couldn't stop stammering his thanks, sounding just like Professor Quirrell. Don't mention it, said Hagrid gruffly. Don't expect you've had a lot of presents from them Dursleys. Just Ollivanders left now. Only place for wands, Ollivanders. You gotta have the best wand. A magic wand. This was what Harry had been really looking forward to. The last shop was narrow and shabby. Peeling gold letters over the door read, Ollivanders, makers of fine wands since 382 BC. A single wand lay on a faded purple cushion in the dusty window. A tinkling bell rang somewhere in the depths of the shop as they stepped inside. It was a tiny place, empty, except for a single spindly chair that Hagrid sat on to wait. Harry felt strangely as though he'd entered a very strict library. He swallowed a lot of new questions that had just occurred to him, and looked instead at the thousands of narrow boxes piled neatly right up to the ceiling. For some reason, the back of his neck prickled. The very dust and silence in here seemed to tingle with some secret magic. Good afternoon, said a soft voice. Harry jumped. Hagrid must have jumped too, because there was a loud crunching noise, and he got quickly off the spindly chair. An old man was standing before them, his wide, pale eyes shining like moons through the gloom of the shop. Hello, said Harry awkwardly. Ah, yes, said the man. Yes. I thought I'd be seeing you soon, Harry Potter. It wasn't a question. You have your mother's eyes. It seems only yesterday she was in here herself, buying her first wand. 10 1/4 inches long, swishy, made of willow. Nice wand for charm work. Mr. Ollivander moved closer to Harry. Harry wished he could blink. Those silvery eyes were a bit creepy. Your father, on the other hand, favored a mahogany wand. 11 inches, pliable, a little more power, and excellent for transfiguration. Well, I say your father favored it. It's really the wand chooses the wizard, of course. Mr. Ollivander had come so close that he and Harry were almost nose to nose. Harry could see himself reflected in those misty eyes. And that's where... Mr. Ollivander touched the lightning scar on Harry's forehead with a long white finger. I'm sorry to say I sold the wand that did it, he said softly. 13 1/2 inches. You. Powerful wand. Very powerful. And in the wrong hands. Well, if I'd known what that wand was going out in the world to do... He shook his head, and then to Harry's relief spotted Hagrid. Rubeus! Rubeus Hagrid! How nice to see you again. Oak! 17 inches, rather bendy, wasn't it? It was, sir. Yes, said Hagrid. Good wand, that one. But I suppose they snapped it in half when you got expelled, said Mr. Ollivander, suddenly stern. Yes, they did, yes, said Hagrid, shuffling his feet. I've still got the pieces, though, he said brightly. You don't use them, said Mr. Ollivander sharply. Oh, no, sir, said Harry quickly. Said Hagrid quickly. Harry noticed he gripped his pink umbrella very tightly as he spoke. Said Mr. Ollivander, giving Hagrid a piercing look. Well now, Mr. Potter, let me see. He pulled out a long tape measure with silver markings from his pocket. Which is your wand arm? Well, I'm right-handed, said Harry. Hold out your arm. That's it. He measured Harry from shoulder to finger, and then wrist to elbow, shoulder to floor, knee to armpit, and around his head. As he measured, he said, Every Ollivander wand has a core of a powerful magical substance, Mr. Potter. We use unicorn hairs, phoenix tail feathers, and the heartstrings of dragons. No 2 Ollivander wands are the same, just as no 2 unicorns, dragons, or phoenixes are quite the same. And of course you will never get such good results with another wizard's wand. Harry suddenly realized that the tape measurer, which was measuring between his nostrils, was doing it on its own. Mr. Ollivander was flitting around the shelves taking down boxes. "Ah, this will do," he said. And the tape measure... He said, "That will do," he said. The tape measure crumpled into a heap on the floor. "Right then, Mr. Potter. Try this one. Beech wood and dragon heartstring. 9 inches. Nice and flexible. Just take it and give it a wave." Give it a wave. Harry took the wand and, feeling foolish, waved it around a bit, but Mr. Ollivander snatched it back from his hand at once. "Maple phoenix feather, 7 inches. Quite whippy. Try..." Harry tried, but he had hardly raised the wand when it too was snatched back by Mr. Ollivander. "No, no. Here, ebony unicorn hair, 8.5 inches. Springy. Go on, try it out." Harry tried and tried. He had no idea what Mr. Ollivander was waiting for. A pile of tried wands was mounting higher and higher and higher on the spindly chair, but the more wands Mr. Ollivander pulled from the shelf, the happier he seemed to become. "Tricky customer, eh? Not to worry, we'll find the perfect match here somewhere. I wonder now. Yes, why not? Unusual combination. Holly and phoenix feather, 11 inches, nice and supple." Harry took the wand. He felt a sudden warmth in his fingers. He raised the wand above his head and brought it swooshing down through the dusty air. A stream of red and gold sparks shot from the end like fireworks, throwing dancing spots of light on the walls. Hagrid whooped and clapped, and Mr. Ollivander cried, "Oh, bravo! Yes, indeed! Oh, very good! Well, well, well! How curious! How very curious!" He put Harry's wand back into its box and wrapped it in a brown paper, still muttering, "Curious, curious." "Sorry," said Harry, "but what's curious?" Mr. Ollivander fixed Harry with a pale stare. "I remember every wand I've ever sold, Mr. Potter. Every single wand. And it so happens that the phoenix, whose tail feather is in your wand, gave another feather. Just one other. It's very curious indeed that you should be destined for this wand, when its brother gave you that scar." Harry swallowed. "Yes, 13.5 inches. You. Curious, indeed, enough about how these things happen. The wand chooses the wizard, remember. I think we must expect great things from you, Mr. Potter. After all, he who must not be named did great things. Terrible, yes, but great." Harry shivered. He wasn't sure he liked Mr. Ollivander too much. He paid 7 gold galleons for his wand, and Mr. Ollivander bowed. Mr. Ollivander bowed them from his shop. The late afternoon sun hung low in the air as Harry and Hagrid made their way back down Diagon Alley, back through the wall, back through the leaky cauldron, now empty. Harry didn't speak at all as they walked down the road. He didn't even notice how much people were gawking at them on the underground, laden up as they were with all their funny-shaped packages, with the snowy owl asleep in its cage on Harry's lap. Up another escalator, out onto Paddington Station. Harry only realized where they were when Hagrid tapped him on the shoulder. "Got time for a bite to eat before your train leaves," he said. He bought Harry a hamburger. They sat down on plastic seats to eat them. Harry kept looking around. Everything looked so strange somehow. "You all right, Harry? You're very quiet," said Hagrid. Harry wasn't sure he could explain. He'd just had the best birthday of his life, and yet he chewed his hamburger trying to find the words. "Everyone thinks I'm special," he said at last. "All those people in the leaky cauldron, Professor Quirrell, Mr. Ollivander. But I don't know anything about magic at all. How can they expect great things? I'm famous, and I can't even remember what I'm famous for. I don't know what happened when The night my parents died." Hagrid leaned across the table. Behind the wild beard and eyebrows, he wore a very kind smile. "Don't you worry, Harry. You'll learn fast enough. Everyone starts at the beginning at Hogwarts. You'll be just fine. Just be yourself. I know it's hard. You've been singled out, and that's always hard. But you'll have a great time at Hogwarts. I did. Still do, as a matter of fact." Hagrid helped Harry onto the train that would take him back to the Dursleys and then handed him an envelope. "Your ticket for Hogwarts," he said. "1st of September, King's Cross. It's all on your ticket. Any problem with the Dursleys, send me a letter with your owl. She'll know where to find me. See you soon, Harry." The train pulled out of the station. Harry wanted to watch Hagrid until he was out of sight. He rose in his seat and pressed his nose against the window, but he blinked and Hagrid was gone. Shall we read chapter 6 too? I've got 5 viewers now. I need some more water. Hey everybody. I hope you're enjoying the reading of Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. Do you want me to read the next chapter too? Or do you have to put Manny to bed, Angie? Okay, Capri, I'll keep reading. All right, you need to keep Manny up. Keep him up for an extra half an hour. That's not vodka, it's water, you crazy lady. Time is a lie. You're right. All right, I do need to drink some more. Yeah. That one's gone. Mr. Ollivander's voice put a weird feeling in my throat because I had to do it so quietly. Alright. So, chapter 6. The journey from platform 9 3/4. You see the picture? The chocolate frog is Albus Dumbledore. Alright. Harry's last month with the Dursleys wasn't fun. True, Dudley was now scared of Harry, and he wouldn't stay in the same room, while Aunt Petunia and Uncle Vernon didn't shut Harry in his cupboard, force him to do anything, or shout at him. In fact, they didn't speak to him at all. Half terrified, half furious, "Capri, you know that I don't drink vodka. You know that I drink whiskey. We've gone drinking twice before." Same with you, Angie. Half terrified, half furious, they acted as though any chair with Harry in it were empty. Although this was an improvement in many ways, it did become a bit depressing after a while. Harry kept to his room with his new owl for company. He had decided to call her Hedwig, a name he found in A History of Magic. His school books were very interesting. He lay on his bed reading late into the night, Hedwig swooping in and out of the open window as she pleased. It was lucky that Aunt Petunia didn't come in to vacuum anymore, because Hedwig kept bringing back dead mice. Every night before he went to sleep, Harry ticked off another day on a piece of paper he had pinned to the wall, counting down to September the 1st. Yes, of course, Angie. On the last day of August, he thought he'd better speak to his aunt and uncle about getting to King's Cross Station the next day, so he went down to the living room where they were watching a quiz show on television. He cleared his throat to let them know he was there. Dudley screamed and ran from the room. Uncle Vernon?" Uncle Vernon grunted to show he was listening. Hmm. Um, I need to be at King's Cross tomorrow to go to Hogwarts. Uncle Vernon grunted again. Would it be all right if you gave me a lift? Grunt. Harry supposed that meant yes. Thank you. He was about to go back upstairs when Uncle Vernon actually spoke. Funny way to get to a wizard's school, the train. Magic carpets all got punctures, have they? Harry didn't say anything. Where is this school anyway? I don't know, said Harry, realizing this for the first time. He pulled the ticket Hagrid had given him out of his pocket. I just take the train from platform 9 3/4 at 11 o'clock, he said. He read. His aunt and uncle stared. Platform what? 9 3/4. Don't talk rubbish, said Uncle Vernon. There's no platform 9 3/4. It's on my ticket. Barking, said Uncle Vernon. Howling mad, the lot of 'em. You'll see. You just wait. All right, we'll take you to King's Cross. We're going up to London tomorrow anyway, or I wouldn't bother. Why are you going to London? Harry asked, trying to keep things friendly. Taking Dudley to the hospital, growled Uncle Vernon. Gotta have that ruddy tail removed before he goes to Smeltings. That's right, Dudley has a little piggy tail. Little piggy tail. Little fat little fuck. Sorry. Harry woke at 5 o'clock the next morning and was too excited and nervous to go back to sleep. He got up and pulled on his jeans. He didn't want to walk to the station in his wizarding robes. He'd change on the train. He checked his Hogwarts list yet again to make sure he had everything he needed, saw that Hedwig was shut safely in her cage, and then paced the room waiting for the Dursleys to get up. 2 hours later, Harry's huge, heavy trunk had been loaded into the Dursleys' car. Aunt Petunia had talked Dudley into sitting next to Harry, and they had set off. They reached King's Cross at 10:30. Uncle Vernon dumped Harry's trunk onto a cart and wheeled it into the station for him. Harry thought this was strangely kind until Uncle Vernon stopped dead, facing the platform with a nasty grin on his face. Well, there you go, boy. Platform 9, platform 10. Your platform should be somewhere in the middle, but they don't seem to have built it just yet, do they? He was quite right, of course. There was a big plastic number 9 over one platform, and a big plastic number 10 over the other one next to it, and in the middle, nothing at all. Have a good term, said Uncle Vernon with an even nastier smile. He left without another word. Harry turned and saw the Dursleys drive away, all three of them laughing. Harry's mouth went very dry. What on earth was he going to do? He was starting to attract a lot of funny looks because of Hedwig. He'd have to ask someone. He stopped a passing guard, but didn't dare mention platform 9 3/4. The guard had never heard of Hogwarts, and when Harry couldn't even tell him what part of the country it was in, he started to get annoyed, as though Harry was being stupid on purpose. Getting desperate, Harry asked for the train that left at 11 o'clock, but the guard said there wasn't one. In the end, the guard strode away, muttering about time wasters. Harry was now trying hard not to panic. According to the large clock over the arrival boards, he had 10 minutes left to get on the train to Hogwarts, and he had no idea how to do it. He was stranded in the middle of a station with a trunk he could hardly lift, a pocket full of wizarding money, and a large owl. Hagrid must have forgotten to tell him something you had to do, like tapping the third brick on the left to get into Diagon Alley. He wondered if he should get out his wand and start tapping the ticket inspector's stand between platforms 9 and 10. At that moment, a group of people passed just behind him, and he caught a few words of what they were saying. Packed with muggles, of course. Harry swung around. The speaker was a plump woman who was talking to 4 boys, all with flaming red hair. Each of them was pushing a trunk like Harry's in front of him, and they had an owl. Heart hammering, Harry pushed his cart after him. They stopped, and so did he, just near enough to hear what they were saying. Now, what's the platform number? Said the boy's mother. 9 3/4, piped a small girl, also red-headed, who was holding her hand. Mom, can't I go? You're not old enough, Ginny. Now be quiet. All right, Percy, you go first. What looked like the oldest boy marched toward platforms 9 and 10. Harry watched, careful not to blink in case he missed it. But just as the boy reached the dividing barrier between the two platforms, a large crowd of tourists came swarming in front of him, and by the time the last backpack had cleared away, the boy had vanished. Fred, you're next, the plump woman said. I'm not Fred, I'm George, said the boy. Honestly, woman, you call yourself our mother. Can't you tell I'm George? Sorry, George, dear. Ha, only joking. I'm Fred, said the boy, and off he went. His twin called after him to hurry up. He must have done so, because a second later he had gone. But how had he done it? Now the third brother was walking briskly towards the barrier. He was almost there, and quite suddenly he wasn't anywhere. There was nothing else for it. Excuse me, said Harry to the plump woman. Hello, dear, she said. First time at Hogwarts? Ron's new, too. She pointed at the last and youngest of her sons. He was tall, thin, and gangling, with freckles, big hands and feet, and a long nose. Yes, said Harry. The thing is, I don't know how to get on the platform, she said kindly, and Harry nodded. Don't worry, she said. All you have to do is walk straight at the barrier between platforms 9 and 10. Don't stop. Don't be scared you'll crash into it. That's very important. Best to do it at a bit of a run if you're nervous. Go on. Go now before Ron. Okay, said Harry. He pushed his trolley around and stared at the barrier. It looked very solid. He started to walk towards it, people jostling him on their way to platforms 9 and 10. Harry walked more quickly. He was going to smash right into that barrier, and then he'd be in trouble. Leaning forward on his cart, he broke into a heavy run. The barrier was coming nearer and nearer. He wouldn't be able to stop. The cart was out of control. He was a foot away. He closed his eyes, ready for a crash. It didn't come. He kept on running. He opened his eyes. A scarlet steam engine was waiting next to a platform packed with people. A sign overhead said Hogwarts Express, 11 o'clock. Harry looked behind him and saw a wrought iron archway where the barrier had been, with the platforms 9 3/4 on it. He had done it. Smoke from the engine drifted over the heads of the chattering crowd, while cats of every color wound here and there between their legs. Owls hooted to one another in a disgruntled sort of way over the babble and the scraping of heavy trunks. The first few carriages were already packed with students, some hanging out the windows to talk to their families, some fighting over seats. Harry pushed his cart off the platform in search of an empty seat. He passed a round-faced boy who was saying, Gran, I've lost my toad again. Oh, Neville, he heard the old woman sigh. A boy with dreadlocks was surrounded by a small crowd. Give us a look, Lee, go on. The boy lifted the lid of the box in his arms, and the people around him shrieked and yelled as something inside poked out a long, hairy leg. I'm guessing a tarantula. Harry passed on through the crowd until he found an empty compartment near the end of the train. He put Hedwig inside first, and then started to shove and heave his trunk toward the train door. He tried to lift it up the steps, but could hardly raise one end, and twice he dropped it painfully on his foot. Want a hand? It was one of the red-headed twins he'd followed through the barrier. Yes, please, Harry panted. Oi, Fred, come here and help. With the twins' help, Harry's trunk was at last tucked away in the corner of the compartment. Thanks, said Harry, pushing his sweaty hair out of his eyes. What's that? One of the twins said suddenly, pointing at Harry's lightning bolt scar. Blimey, said the other twin. Are you? He is, said the first twin. Aren't you? He added to Harry. What? Said Harry. Harry Potter, chorused the twins. Oh, him, said Harry. Yes, I am. The two boys gawked at him, and Harry felt himself turning red. Then, to his relief, a voice came floating through the train's open door. "Fred! George! Are you there?" "Coming, Mom." With a last look at Harry, the twins hopped off the train. Harry sat down next to the window where, half hidden, he could watch the red-headed family on the platform and hear what they were saying. The mother had just taken out her handkerchief. "Ron, you've got something on your nose." The youngest boy gave a jerk out of the way, but she grabbed him and began rubbing the end of his nose. "Mom, get off!" He wiggled free. "Ha! Has Ikowani got something on his nose?" said one of the twins. "Shut up!" said Ron. "Where's Percy?" said the mother. "He's coming now." The older boy was striding into sight. He had already changed to his billowing black Hogwarts robes, and Harry noticed a shiny silver badge on his chest with the letter P on it. "Can't stay long, Mother. I'm up front. The prefects have got 2 compartments to themselves." "Oh, are you a prefect, Percy?" said the twins with an air of great surprise. "You should have said something. We had no idea." "Hang on. I think I remember him saying something about it," said the other twin. "Once or twice. A minute. All summer." "Oh, shut up," said Percy the prefect. "How come Percy's got new robes anyway?" said one of the twins. "Because he's a prefect," said the mother fondly. "All right, dear. Well, have a good term. Send me an owl when you get there." She kissed Percy on the cheek and he left. And then she turned to the twins. "Now you two, this year you behave yourselves. If I get one more owl telling me you've blown up a toilet or..." "Blown up a toilet? We've never blown up a toilet." "Great idea, Mom. Thanks." "It's not funny. Look after Ron." "Don't worry. Ikowanikins is safe with us." "Shut up," said Ron again. He was almost as tall as his twins already, and his nose was still pink where his mother had rubbed it. "Hey, Mom, guess what? Guess who we just met on the train?" Harry leaned back quickly so they couldn't see him looking. "You know that black-haired boy who was near us at the station? Know who he was?" "Who?" "Harry Potter!" Harry heard the little girl's voice. "Oh, Mom, can I go on the train and see him? Mom, oh, please." "You've already seen him, Ginny. The poor boy isn't something you goggle at a zoo. Is he really, Fred? How do you know?" "Asked him. Saw his scar. It's really there, like lightning." "Poor dear. No wonder he was alone. I wondered. He was ever so polite when he asked how to get on the platform." "Never mind that. Do you think he remembers what you-know-who looks like?" The mother suddenly became very stern. "I forbid you to ask him, Fred. Don't you dare. As though he needs reminding of that on his first day of school." "All right, keep your hair on." A whistle sounded. "Hurry up," their mother said, and the boys started clambering onto the train. They leaned out the window for her to kiss them goodbye, and their younger sister began to cry. "Oh, don't, Ginny. We'll send you loads of owls. We'll send you a Hogwarts toilet seat." "George!" "Only joking, Mum." The train began to move. Harry saw the boys' mother waving, and their sister, half laughing, half crying, running to keep up with the train until it gathered too much speed. She fell back and waved. Harry watched the girl and her mother disappear as the train rounded the corner. Houses flashed past the window. Harry felt a great leap of excitement. He didn't know what he was going... He didn't know what he was going to, but it was better than what he was leaving behind. The door of the compartment slid open, and the youngest red-headed boy came in. "Anyone sitting there?" he said, pointing at the seat opposite Harry. "Everywhere else is full." Harry shook his head, and the boy sat down. He glanced at Harry and then quickly glanced out the window, pretending he hadn't looked. Harry saw he still had a black mark on his nose. "Hey, Ron!" The twins were back. "Listen, we're going down the middle of the train. Lee Jordan's got a giant tarantula down there." "Right," mumbled Ron. "Harry," said the other twin, "did we introduce ourselves?" Fred and George Weasley. And this is Ron, our brother. See you later, then. Bye, said Harry and Ron. The twins slid the compartment door shut behind them. Are you really Harry Potter? Ron blurted out. Harry nodded. Oh. I thought maybe it was one of Fred and George's jokes. And that, have you really got, you know... He pointed at Harry's forehead. Harry pulled back his bangs to show the lightning scar. Ron stared. So that's where you know who... Yes, said Harry, but I can't remember it. Nothing? Said Ron eagerly. Well, I remember a lot of green light, but nothing else. Wow, said Ron. He sat and stared at Harry for a few moments, and then, as though he had suddenly realized what he was doing, he looked quickly out the window again. Are all of your family wizards? Asked Harry, who found Ron just as interesting as Ron found him. Yeah, I think so, said Ron. I think Mom's got a second cousin who's an accountant, but we never talk about him. So you must know loads of magic already. The Weasleys were clearly one of the old wizarding families the pale boy at Diagon Alley had talked about. I heard you went to live with muggles, said Ron. What are they like? Horrible. Well, not all of them. My aunt and uncle and cousin are, though. Wish I'd had 3 wizarding brothers. 5, said Ron. For some reason he was looking gloomy. I'm the 6th in our family to go to Hogwarts. You could say I've got a lot to live up to. Bill and Charlie have already left. Bill was head boy and Charlie was captain of Quidditch. Now Percy's a prefect. Fred and George mess around a lot, but they're still really good. They still get really good marks and everyone thinks they're really funny. Everyone expects me to do as well as the others. But if I do, it's no big deal because they did it first. You never get anything new either with 5 brothers. I've got Bill's old robes, Charlie's old wand, and Percy's old rat. Ron reached inside his jacket and pulled out a fat gray rat which was asleep. His name's Scabbers, and he's useless. He hardly ever wakes up. Percy got an owl from Dad for being made prefect, but they couldn't I got Scabbers instead. Ron's ears went pink. He seemed to think he'd said too much because he went back to staring out the window. Harry didn't think there was anything wrong with not being able to afford an owl. After all, he'd never had any money in his life until a month ago. He told Ron so. All about having to wear Dudley's old clothes and never getting a proper birthday present. That seemed to cheer Ron up. And until Hagrid told me, I didn't know anything about being a wizard or about my parents or Voldemort. Ron gasped. What? Said Harry. You said you know whose name, said Ron, sounding both shocked and impressed. I'd have thought you, of all people. I'm not trying to be brave or anything, saying the name, said Harry. I just never knew you shouldn't. See, that's what I mean. I've got loads to learn, I bet, he added, voicing for the first time something that had been worrying him a lot lately. I bet I'm the worst in the class. You won't be. There's loads of people who come from Muggle families, and they learn quick enough. While they had been talking, the train had carried them out of London. Now they were speeding past fields of cows and sheep. They were quiet for a time, watching the fields and lanes flick past. Around 12:30, there was a great clattering outside the corridor, and a smiling, dimpling woman slid back their door and said, "Anything off the cart, dears?" Harry, who hadn't had any breakfast, leapt to his feet, but Ron's ears went pink and he muttered that he'd brought a sandwich. That he brought sandwiches. Sorry, plural. Harry went out into the corridor. He'd never had any money for candy with the Dursleys, and now that he had pockets rattling with gold and silver, he was ready to buy as many Mars bars as he could carry. But the woman didn't have Mars bars. What she did have were Bertie Bott's every flavored beans, absolutely delicious if nobody's ever tried them, Drooble's best blowing gum, chocolate frogs, also delicious, pumpkin pasties, cauldron cakes, licorice wands, and a number of other strange things Harry had never seen in his life. Not wanting to miss anything, he got some of everything and paid the woman 11 silver sickles and 7 bronze nuts. Ron stared as Harry brought it all back into the compartment and tipped it out onto an empty seat. Hungry, are you? Starving, said Harry, taking a large bite out of a pumpkin pasty. Ron had taken out a lumpy package and unwrapped it. There were 4 sandwiches inside. He pulled one apart and said, She always forgets I don't like corned beef. Swap you for one of these, said Harry, holding out a pasty. Go on. You don't want this. It's all dry, Ron said. She hasn't got much time, he added quickly. With 5 of us. Go on. Have a pasty. Pasty. P-A-S-T-Y. Pasty? Said Harry, who had never had anything to share before, or indeed anyone to share it with. It was a nice feeling, sitting there with Ron, eating their way through all of Harry's pasties, cakes, and candies. The sandwiches lay forgotten. What are these? Harry asked Ron, holding up a pack of chocolate frogs. They're not really frogs, are they? He was starting to feel that nothing would surprise him. No, said Ron. But see what the card says? But see what the card is. I'm missing Agrippa. What? Oh, of course you wouldn't know. Chocolate frogs have cards inside them, to collect. Famous witches and wizards. I've got about 500, but I haven't got Agrippa or Ptolemy. Harry unwrapped his chocolate frog and picked up the card. It showed a man's face. He wore half-moon glasses, had a long crooked nose, and a flowing silver beard and mustache. Underneath the picture was the name Albus Dumbledore. So this is Dumbledore, said Harry. Don't tell me you've never heard of Dumbledore, said Ron. Can I have the frog? I might get Agrippa. Thanks. Harry turned over his card and read, Albus Dumbledore, currently headmaster of Hogwarts. Considered by many the greatest wizard of modern times, Dumbledore is particularly famous for his defeat of the dark wizard Grindelwald in 1945, for the discovery of 12 uses of dragon's blood, and for his work on alchemy with his partner Nicholas Flamel. Professor Dumbledore enjoys chamber music in 10-pin bowling. Harry turned the card back over and saw, to his astonishment, that Dumbledore's face had disappeared. He's gone! Well, you can't expect him to hang around all day, said Ron. He'll be back. Ugh, no, I got Morgana again. I've got about 6 of her. Do you want it? You can start collecting. Ron's eyes stayed on the pile of chocolate frogs waiting to be unwrapped. Help yourself, said Harry. But in, the Muggle world, people stay put in photos. Do they? What? They don't move at all? Ron sounded amazed. Weird. Harry stared as Dumbledore sidled back into the picture of his card, and he gave a small smile. Ron was more interested in eating the frogs than looking at the famous witches and wizard cards, but Harry couldn't keep his eyes off of them. Soon he had not only Dumbledore and Morgana, but Hengist of Woodcroft, Alberic Grunion, Circe, Parcelus, and Merlin. He finally tore his eyes away from the druidess Cleodna, who was scratching her nose, to open a bag of Bertie Bott's every flavored beans. You want to be careful with those, Ron warned Harry. When they say every flavor, they mean every flavor. You got the ordinary ones like chocolate and peppermint and marmalade. But then you get spinach, liver, and tripe. George reckons he had a booger-flavored one once. Ron picked up a green bean, looking at it carefully, and bit into the corner. Ugh! See? Sprouts. They had a good time eating the every-flavored beans. Harry got toast and coconut, baked bean, strawberry, curry, grass, coffee, sardine, and was even brave enough to nibble the end of a funny gray one that Ron wouldn't touch, which turned out to be pepper. The countryside, now flying past the window, was becoming wilder. The neat fields had gone. Now there were woods, twisting rivers, and dark green hills. There was a knock on the door of their compartment, and the round-faced boy Harry had passed on platform 9 3/4 came in. He looked tearful. "Sorry," he said, "but have you seen a toad at all?" When they shook his heads, when they shook their heads, he wailed, "I've lost him! He keeps getting away from me!" "He'll turn up," said Harry. "Yeah," said the boy miserably. "Well, if you see him." He left. "I don't know why he's so bothered," said Ron. "If I brought a toad, I'd lose it as quick as I could. Mind you, I brought Scabbers, so I can't talk." The rat was still snoozing on Ron's lap. "He might have died and you wouldn't know the difference," said Ron in disgust. "I tried to turn him yellow yesterday to make him look more interesting, but the spell didn't work. I'll show you, look." He rummaged around in his trunk and pulled out a very battered-looking wand. It was chipped in places, and something white was glistening at the end. "Unicorn hairs nearly poking out. Anyway," he had just raised his wand when the compartment door slid open again. The toadless boy was back, but this time he had a girl with him. She was also wearing her new Hogwarts robes. "Has anyone seen a toad? Neville's lost one," she said. She had a bossy sort of voice, and a lot of bushy brown hair and a rather large front teeth. "We've already told him we haven't seen it," said Ron, but the girl wasn't listening. She was looking at the wand in his hand. "Oh, you're doing magic? Let's see, then." She sat down. Ron looked taken aback. All right," he cleared his throat. "Sunshine daisies, butter mellow, turn this stupid fat rat yellow." He waved his wand, but nothing happened. Scabbers lay grey and fast asleep. "Are you sure that's a real spell?" said the girl. "Well, it's not very good, is it? I've tried a few simple spells just for practice, and it's all worked for me. Nobody in my family's magic at all. It was ever such a surprise when I got my letter, but I was ever so pleased, of course. I mean, it's the very best school of witchcraft there is, I've heard. I've learned all of the course books by heart, of course. I just hope it will be enough. I'm Hermione Granger, by the way. Who are you?" She said all of this very fast. Harry looked at Ron and was relieved to see by his stunned face that he hadn't learned all of the course books by heart either. "I'm Ron Weasley," Ron muttered. "Harry Potter," said Harry. "Are you really?" said Hermione. "I know all about you, of course. I got a few extra books for background reading, and you're in Modern Magical History, The Rise and Fall of the Dark Arts, and Great Wizarding Events of the 20th Century. "Am I?" said Harry, feeling dazed. "Goodness, don't you know? I'd have found out everything I could if it was me," said Hermione. "Do either of you know what house you'll be in? I've been asking around, and I hope I'm in Gryffindor. It sounds by far the best. I hear Dumbledore himself was in it, but I suppose Ravenclaw wouldn't be too bad. Anyway, we'd better go and look for Neville's toad. You two had better change, you know. I expect we'll be there soon." And she left, taking the toadless boy with her. "Whatever house I'm in, I hope she's not in it," said Ron. He threw his wand back in the trunk. "Stupid spell. George gave it to me. Bet he knew it was a dud." "What house are your brothers in?" asked Harry. "Gryffindor," said Ron. Gloom seemed to be settling over him again. "Mom and Dad were in it too. I don't know what they'll say if I'm not. I don't suppose Ravenclaw would be too bad, but imagine if they put me in Slytherin. That's the house I mean, you know who was in, right?" "Yeah," said Ron. He flopped back into his seat, looking depressed. "You know, I think the ends of Scabbers' whiskers are a bit lighter," said Harry, trying to take Ron's mind off houses. "So what do your oldest brothers do now that they've left anyway?" Harry was wondering what a wizard did once he finished school. "Charlie's in Romania studying dragons, and Bill's in Africa doing something for Gringotts," said Ron. "Did you hear about Gringotts? It's been all over the Daily Prophet. I don't suppose you get that with the Muggles. Someone tried to rob a high-security vault." Harry stared. Really? What happened to them? Nothing. That's why it's such big news. They haven't been caught. My dad says it must have been a powerful dark wizard to get round Gringotts, but they don't think they took anything. That's what's odd. Of course, everyone gets scared when something like this happens in case you know who's behind it. Harry turned this news over in his mind. He was starting to get a prickle of fear every time you know who was mentioned. He supposed this was all part of entering the magical world, but it had been a lot more comfortable saying Voldemort without worrying. What's your Quidditch team? Ron asked. I don't know any, Harry said confused. What? Ron said dumbfounded. Oh, you wait. It's the best game in the world. And he was off, explaining all about the 4 balls and the positions of the 7 players, describing famous games he'd been to with his brothers and the broomstick he'd like to get if he had the money. He was just taking Harry through the finer points of the game when the compartment door slid open yet again. But it wasn't Neville the Toadless Boy or Hermione Granger this time. 3 boys entered, and Harry recognized the middle one at once. It was the pale boy from Madame Milkin's robe shop. He was looking at Harry with a lot more interest than he'd shown back in Diagon Alley. Is it true? He said. They're saying all down the train that Harry Potter's in this compartment. So it's you, isn't it? Yes, said Harry. He was looking at the other boys. Both of them were thick-set and looked extremely mean. Standing on either side of the pale boy, they looked like bodyguards. This is Crabbe, and this is Goyle, said the pale boy carelessly, noticing that Harry was looking. And my name's Malfoy. Draco Malfoy. Ron gave a slight cough, which might have been hiding a snicker. Draco Malfoy looked at him. Think my name's funny, do you? No need to ask who you are. My father told me all of the Weasleys have red hair, freckles, and more children than they can afford. He turned back to Harry. You'll soon find out some wizarding families are much better than others, Potter. You don't want to go making friends with the wrong sort. I can help you there. He held out his hand to shake Harry's, but Harry didn't take it. I think I can tell the wrong sort for myself. Thanks, he said coolly. Malfoy didn't go red, but a pink tinge appeared in his pale cheeks. I'd be careful if I were you, Potter, he said slowly. Unless you're a bit politer, you'll go the same way as your parents. They didn't know what was good for them either. You hang around with riffraff like the Weasleys and that Hagrid, and it'll rub off on you. Both Harry and Ron stood up. Say that again, Ron said, his face as red as his hair. Oh, you're going to fight us, are you? Malfoy sneered. Unless you get out now, said Harry, more bravely than he felt, because Crabbe and Goyle were a lot bigger than him and Ron. But we don't feel like leaving, do we, boys? We've eaten all our food, and you still seem to have some. Goyle reached towards the chocolate frogs next to Ron. Ron leapt forward, but before he'd so much as touched Goyle, Goyle let out a horrible yell. Scabbers the rat was hanging off his finger, sharp little teeth sunk deep into Goyle's knuckle. Crabbe and Malfoy backed away as Goyle swung Scabbers round and around, howling. And when Scabbers finally flew off and hit the window, all 3 of them disappeared at once. Perhaps they thought there were more rats lurking around the suites, or perhaps they'd heard footsteps, because a second later Hermione Granger was on them. Hermione Granger had come in. What has been going on? She said, looking at the sweets all over the floor and Ron picking up Scabbers by the tail. I think he's been knocked out, Ron said to Harry. He looked closer at Scabbers. No, I don't believe it. He's gone back to sleep. And so he had. You've met Malfoy before? Harry explained about their meeting in Diagon Alley. I've heard of his family, said Ron darkly. They are some of the first to come back to our side after you-know-who disappeared. Said they'd been bewitched. My father doesn't believe it. He says Malfoy's father didn't need an excuse to go over to the dark side. He turned to Hermione. Can we help you with something? You better hurry up and put your robes on. I've been up to the front to ask the conductor, and he says we're nearly there. You haven't been fighting, have you? You'll be in trouble before we even get there. Scabbers has been fighting, not us, said Ron, scowling at her. Would you mind leaving before we change? Oh, all right. I only came in here because people outside are behaving very childishly, racing up and down the corridors, said Hermione in a sniffy voice. And you've got dirt on your nose, by the way. Did you know? Harry glared at her as she left. Harry peered out the window. It was getting dark. He could see mountains and forests under a deep purple sky. The train did seem to be slowing down. He and Ron took off their jackets and pulled on their long black robes. Ron's were a bit short for him. You could see his sneakers underneath. A voice called through the train, We'll be reaching Hogwarts in 5 minutes' time. Please leave your luggage on the train. It will be taken to the school separately. Harry's stomach lurched with nerves, and Ron, he saw, looked pale under his freckles. They crammed their pockets with the last of the sweets and joined the crowd thronging the corridor. The train slowed right down and finally stopped. People pushed their way towards the door and out onto a tiny dark platform. Harry shivered in the cold night air. Then a lamp came bobbing over the heads of the students. Harry heard a familiar voice. First years over here. All right, Harry? Hagrid's big hairy face beamed over the sea of heads. Come on, follow me. Any more first years? Mind your step now. First years, follow me. Slipping and stumbling, they followed Hagrid down what seemed to be a steep, narrow path. It was so dark on either side of them that Harry thought there must be thick trees there. Nobody spoke much. Neville, the boy who kept losing his toad, sniffed once or twice. You'll get your first sight of Hogwarts in a sec, Hagrid called over his heads. Just round this bend here. There was a loud, oh. The narrow path had opened suddenly onto the edge of a great black lake. Perched atop a high mountain on the other side, its windows sparkling in the starry sky, was a vast castle with many turrets and towers. No more than 4 to a boat, Hagrid called, pointing to a fleet of little boats sitting on the water by the shore. Harry and Ron were followed into their boat by Neville and Hermione. Everyone in? Shouted Hagrid, who had a boat to himself. Right then. Forward! And the fleet of little boats moved off all at once, gliding across the lake, which was as smooth as glass. Everyone was silent, staring up at the great castle overhead. It towered over them as they sailed nearer and nearer to the cliff on which it stood. Heads down! Yelled Hagrid as the first boats reached the cliff. They bent their heads, and the little boats carried them through a curtain of ivy that hid a wide opening in the cliff face. They were carried along a dark tunnel which seemed to be taking them right underneath the castle, until they reached a kind of underground harbor, where they clambered out onto rocks and pebbles. Oi, there you are! Is this your toad? Said Hagrid, who was checking the boats of people climbing out of them. Trevor! Said Neville blissfully, holding out his hands. And then they clambered up the passageway in the rocks until, after Hagrid's lamp, coming out at last onto smooth, damp grass right in the shadow of the castle. They walked up a flight of stone steps and crowded around a huge oak front door. Everyone here? You there, still got your toad? Hagrid raised a gigantic fist, knocked 3 times on the castle door. And that is where we end tonight. Tomorrow, or maybe Monday. No, I'll do it tomorrow. We will read on Easter. Tomorrow we will read Chapter 7, The Sorting Hat. Whew. All right. Let's see. What other comments? I still have 3 people watching. I'm so sorry, Manny. I did not mean to say a bad word. It just kind of slid out of my mouth. I did you know, say that it might happen every now and then. All right. I'm getting off of here now. Thank you guys for watching. I still have 3 watchers. I don't know who you are, but I appreciate it. Can I find out? I have no idea. All right. Thank you guys. Angie, we're going to video chat here in a second so we can have a shot of whiskey before you send Manny off to bed. Manny's going to have a shot of water, guys. Last night it was ginger ale. I promise. My best friend is not feeding her kid alcoholic beverages. We would never do such a thing. Ever. Oh, Capri, did you watch the whole thing? Did you like it? If you've missed any of the book, the other 2 broadcasts are on my page and you can listen. You don't have to watch me. I'm sure it's amusing to watch, but you can definitely just prop your phone up or whatever and just listen to me while you do laundry. Or wash your dishes. All right. Bye, guys. Thank you for watching. Tomorrow we'll do this again. Or around the same time, maybe 5 p.m.